Hi, Bob from Pinegrow here. In this tutorial, we'll be looking at how the Pinegrow web editor can make multi-page projects a little easier. In a past tutorial, we looked at how components could be used to ensure that specific elements, such as headers and footers, maintained a specific design and were easily updatable across multiple pages. In this tutorial, we will look at how to take this a step further with master pages. As I've covered previously, Pinegrow components allow you to define any HTML elements as selectively editable library items. Updating a component definition in one place will update all instances of the component project-wide, even on different pages. This is a powerful tool, so you may be asking, why do we need master pages? Like components, master pages allow you to have selectively editable areas across multiple pages in your project. Further, like components, editing the master page will cause all of the pages using that master in your project to update. Unlike components, however, this means that any changes, including things like adding new style sheets or linking in a new Google font, will update across multiple pages. Not only does it reduce the amount of effort needed to make project-wide changes, it also reduces the workload for creating new pages. Pinegrow does all of the work, adding the header information and other script links for you when you simply select your master page as a template. So, let's get started and learn about master pages. When working with master pages, it's worthwhile to mock your pages up to evaluate what will be carried over to multiple pages and needs to be editable, and what is unique to each page. I've put together a very rough wireframe of the home page for this tutorial. I've colored any element that needs to be editable in the child pages in red. So as you can see here, if I zoom in, the menu links will need to have their classes changed in order to indicate which one's active, so I've colored them in red. In addition, we'll have a hero image that needs to be edited for each to reflect the products on each page, a call to action, and then some product blocks, both large and small. However, we're not going to change the featured items and spring and summer here. That way we could easily change them when we switch over to our winter collection. And we're also not going to, in this particular instance, change anything within the footer. Okay, now let's take a look at what one of the child pages looks like. So for example, our women's products page is going to have all of those items that I just mentioned, but it's also going to have some unique product blocks. And then that's the same with both the men's and kids product pages. Pretty much the same sort of layout. I've already put together a bootstrap project that roughly corresponds to the wireframe that we can convert to a master page. You can download it from the link below the video and follow along. So again, as you can see, if we just make this a little bit bigger, we have a top header with menu links, a hero image with some text across it, a call to action, some large product blocks, and some small product blocks followed by the footer. So now if we close things down, we can see that the page basically has 6 sections. Again, that navigation, the top hero, the call to action, a container for the large cards, and a container for the small cards. Okay, let's dig into Pinegrow and see how we can make this a master page. The settings for the master page are contained in the action panel. So first, we'll click on the index.html just to select the page, and then we'll go up here to our actions. Now, from our list of actions, we'll simply select master. Now you can see that we have next to our components a set of orange circles. Clicking on that will update our entire project with the action changes that we just made. I'm just going to close this down and open this up a bit so that we can see the controls a bit better. As we covered in a previous tutorial, all of the items under the Components section allows you to define HTML elements as custom components. The editable areas section below the master page section are used for both the master page and components. Now that we have designated this page as a master page, let's walk through the action settings for each of the sections and elements on the page that need to be editable. If we were to look back at the wireframe, the first thing that we would have to make editable is the menu links. We want to be able to add a new class of active to the link if we're on that particular page. So I'm going to use the tree view, open up my menu, and then I'm going to go ahead and select all three of the links. Next, I'm going to navigate back to the actions, and then I'm going to click on editable. Now we'll get this new form. Let's make this a little smaller. And the first thing it's going to ask for is a field ID. Field IDs don't need to be as unique for master pages as they do for components, but it's still not a bad idea to prefix. I'm going to go ahead and add tut to each ID. So for this one, I'm going to add tut.menu links. Now, there's several choices that we can make here, much like with components. In this case, I'm going to turn off the inner content. We don't want to later on accidentally change the name, slip of the keyboard or something like that. So I'll turn that off. And so the only thing that we're going to want to do is be able to change the class. And we want to add or remove the active class. So we'll type active in that box. If we wanted to have multiple classes, then we need either separate with commas in this input field or hit return before entering our next one. But we're just going to add active right now. Okay, so now we can click to update. And now let's go ahead and create a new child page based on this master to see these editable areas. I'm going to reopen this. And then from the master pages tut, I'm going to say add new page. Now at this point, I did not reload my components, so I'm going to get this message. Reload and update components first. Close that out, go back to our components menu, and then hit reload components from project. Now when we go to add a new page, we'll see that with the master pages tut project highlighted in the framework column, we now get our page as a template. So now this page is using that index.html as a master. If we go ahead and click on one of the links, what we can see is that it brings up the field ID. And if we go to the properties panel, we now see that we have a new section called editable properties, and it has within it that ability to add the class. So if we try and text edit, we'll get an error. So we can't accidentally change any of those others. So now the new class has been added to the women's link, so it's lit up. If we go back and look at our index, we'll see that it has the normal coloring as the other two links. Next up, the hero image just under the navigation needs to be editable. It consists of a div with text inside another div with a background image. We want to be able to edit both the background image and the text. To edit the image, select the parent div. Just going to close this down, open this up. So we're going to select this one, div.top-hero. And then I'm going to go to the Actions panel, click on Editable, and then go ahead and add a field ID. I'm going to unclick the inner content, and I'll come back to that in a second. And then this time, since we want to change the background image, we're going to click on this box here. Now, if we were to go over to the Properties panel, what we can see is that we have a new editable property, tut.hero image background image, that has a box where we can either load a local resource, or we can also, if we choose, go up to the page menu and use the Unsplash tool from Pinegrow. I'm just going to go ahead and update this. Okay, so now we want to make this text editable. So we're going to select it, go to the Actions menu. Once again, click Editable and give it a field ID. All right, and that's all we have to do in order for that to be updatable in our child pages. So we're just going to go ahead and refresh that and see that it's working over on our sub page. So here we are. If we click on this, we can see that within the Properties panel, we have an area where we can change the image. If we want to, we can change it with the Unsplash tool. So just pull the page down. Whoop. Click on the Get Free. Let's go with this one. So I'm just going to right-click on the size in order to set it as the background image. And then if we want to, we can go ahead and change this text. All right. So now we can move on to the next section. So going back to our index.html, the next section down is this CTA. Switch over to here, close that down. So this is the next section, the CTA. And if you look at the wireframes, I've decided that on all of my interior pages, I'm just going to delete this. I don't want it to show up. And we can also talk about how we can selectively have it show up. But what I can do is just simply in the tree, again, select that whole section, go up to the Actions menu, and in this case, instead of clicking on Editable for the editable areas, we're going to click on Optional. And then again, we have to put in a field ID. And now we'll go ahead and update and then look at our women's page. Now what we can see is that CTA, which was located right below our hero image and above these product blocks, has disappeared. Okay, even though it's not on my wireframe, I'm going to show you what you would have to do if you wanted to have the CTA back on another page. For example, if we had a kids newsletter that we wanted people to subscribe to off of the kids page. So to do that, let's go ahead and make that kids page. So we're going to go to our project. Actually, first we're going to go to our components. Going to make sure to reload everything and refresh everything. Then we're going to go to the project panel and add new page. Select that master page template again. Create the new page, and you can see that the CTA immediately disappeared. So the one thing I should have done over here is go ahead and save any changes, and then go ahead and close that page. Now what I'm going to do from the index page is I'm going to once again select the CTA, make sure it's selected. Then we're going to go to the Actions, and this time we're going to say Restore on Update. Then we're going to go ahead and not click on the orange arrows, but instead open the Components menu and say Quick Update Only Open Pages. Remember, I just closed the woman's HTML page. Now if we look at the kids HTML, we see that CTA is back. We can now save this. And then if we look and open the women's HTML page, we see that the CTA is still missing. The one thing we want to make sure to do is now go back to our master page and unclick that Restore on Update. We don't want that ticked. Otherwise, if we have the women's page open, it'll add that CTA back. The next section down is composed of 3 large card components. So if we just scroll here, we have a container, and within it are 1, 2, 3 cards, each defined as a component. So we want to be able to, in the interior pages, change out the general card content from the general information that's in there now to specific content for the page we're on. Like, for instance, changing this one over to bikinis or cover-ups on the women's page. As I said, our card is defined as a component, and that component currently has 3 editable areas. The top image here, the header, and the card description. On our master page, all of these fields are going to be editable. So I could go ahead, select this, do whatever I want as far as updating it. And then if you look, when we update, those edits will be kept. But if we go to one of the sub pages, what you can see is that if we go ahead and do further edits, for instance, to put that back, the next time we update our project, we'll see that we lose those edits. So even though these are defined as editable areas according to the component, once you incorporate that component onto a master page, you then lose the ability within subpages, within the child pages, to edit that. And that sort of works like CSS, where the rule that comes in later is the one that's applied. In this case, any of the content that's changed on the master page will be translated over to the child pages unless we specifically mark them as being editable on the master page. Okay. So let's see how Pinegrow can let us change this behavior. So if we select the container that the large cards are contained within, either from the page view or the tree panel, we can then go to the Actions panel and then once again click Editable. Then we can go ahead and give this a field ID. And then what we're going to do is we're going to unclick the inner content. And then this time we're going to go down to the components. Pull that down. And in this case, this is made up of large cards. So we're going to click on the large card component. What this will now allow us to do is it'll allow us to both add and delete the large cards from the component, but it'll also now tell Pinegrow that this master page section has editable components within it. So now if we were to go over to the women's page after we update everything and make an edit here, save, then update the project, we can see that the change is maintained. If we look back at our wireframe again, we can see that for the next section down, there's one row of 4 small card components on the master page here, but we want 2 rows on the child pages. If we made this section simply editable, like we did with the large card section, we could add in additional small card components, but they would not be contained within a bootstrap row, and so they may not collapse correctly on smaller screens. So how do we solve this? First, from the page view or tree panel, select the row that contains each of the small cards. So that's here. And then switch to the Actions panel and click on Editable. So this is just identical to what we were doing before. For the field ID, enter Tut Small Cards and unclick the inner content. Now down in the components, exactly like we did before, we'll select a component. This time we'll select small cards. So now Pinegrow has this area identified as an area where the small card components can be used on the page, both added and removed. However, again, this wouldn't be enough to make sure that that row was also repeated. So we need to do something else here. And for this, we have another action called repeat. So we're going to go ahead and click on that and then add another field ID in. So now if we update our components, what we can see is that on our sub pages, our child pages, we can now go ahead and select that row that contains the small cards, and we can go ahead and hit duplicate. Now we have two sets, both contained within their row. And at the same time, we can also go ahead, make any changes that we want, and that will be maintained through the update. Again, looking at our wireframe, we can see that the interior pages have some unique content not found on the master page in the form of two product blocks. If we were to try and add these to Women's HTML page, Pinegrow won't allow it. So if I just navigate over here, take a look at this product right or product left, go ahead and drag those to the page, the element is locked and it won't let me do it. Okay. So in order to accomplish this, we need to add a dummy section to our master page. So let's navigate there. And then we'll collapse this down. And all I'm going to do is bring a section right in between that last container and the footer. We're going to remove the, empty page holder put there by Pinegrow. And then we're going to go to the actions and click on editable. Again, give it a field ID. This time, however, leave the inner content checkbox ticked. This will allow us to add any content we want within this section on the child pages. So now we'll go ahead and update, navigate over to our women's page. Let's take a look at the tree. So right here is our new section. So we can go ahead and bring that product block right into the new section. And then there was a product right and a product left. So we can bring both of those right in. Now that our master page is complete, we can very quickly make our last interior page. First, from the Components menu, select Reload Components from Project. Navigate to the Projects panel, click on the downward arrow, add our new page, select the master page index.html as template, type in our new page name. You can see that our CTA appeared briefly and then disappeared. Now all we have to do is go up here, go to the properties, add the active class, scroll down, go ahead and select our small cards row, duplicate that, and then once again, go ahead and select those product blocks, drag them into our editable section. And now we're basically ready on the men's page to begin changing the inner content to be more specific for this page. As I mentioned in the intro, master pages also let us make project-wide changes easily, including non-HTML information onto the page. For example, we could add some JavaScript to all the pages by adding the script to the master page. Another example is adding in a Google font. If our design changed and now required a different font for the hero image text, we could just use the built-in Pinegrow tool found under the Page menu, Manage Google Fonts. Go ahead and add a new Google font, for instance this. Then we can select this text, go to our styling, go down to the font family, choose the new font. Then if we go ahead and update, we can see if we look on the kids page, women's page, or the men's page, it now has the same new font change. And if we look at the actual code for the page, we can see that right here, it's loaded in this new font. All right, so this concludes our tutorial about using master pages in the Pinegrow web editor. I hope this illustrated how powerful it is to combine components and master pages to quickly put together multi-page projects. Until the next tutorial, have fun designing with Pinegrow.